many people have died for you?
Do you really want to know?
Huh?
As of yesterday, 99,822 people.
What?
I remember everyone who sacrificed their lives in battle. How could I forget them? Noventa, Septum, Vente, Dorlan, Walker, Otto, Bunt. Their names are all etched into my heart.
Everybody, and welcome back to Zaku Talk. I am your host, Patrick Skeyhill. This season, G versus Wing, and that means my co-host is the giant cactus.
Bob? Skerry? You can't see it through
like
the sound waves, but I'm trying to do a cactar movement.
Pretty good there. And of course, on the audio boards is Lev Van Rensselaer reminding me to remind you that you can email the cast at zakutalkcast@gmail.com, where you can yell at us or praise us or tell us a weird story. We are game for anything. And this week, episode 48 of both shows, we are almost through the runway. But before we get into that, Bob, how's your week been going?
Well, if I'm being honest, has not been great per se. My brain has been scattered to the winds, and I've been doing a lot of different things, like a dog chasing after its tail in a couple of different directions, in that I'm not getting anywhere, but I feel like I am.
Okay, is that good? Is that bad?
It is. You know, I mean,
it is.
I will say that one good thing that has happened over the past week is I am rewatching a series from Dropout, Dimension 20's The Unsleeping City, the first season. Oh my goodness. It's such a wonderful story. And I really do like the way that they do like 2-hour episodes. It's not these extended play things like a very well-known D&D show that is out there. I'll just name drop it. It's Critical Role, which, by the way, at the time of recording, they are going to be releasing the finale, which is going to be over 7 hours.
That is an episode maybe you could have broken up.
Yeah, and they have. There is a break point that they themselves have told their fans, you should not try to binge this in one episode. You should just, like, take care of yourselves. Highly recommended. What about you, Scale?
As for me, I had this shoot coming up. We've been planning since last May. Some scheduling location things came up, so we're actually moving it back to the middle of July. Not terrible. It'll allow us to make a better film anyway, so I'm not begrudging it too much. Our post window doesn't change, or it gets extended because of it, so fine with me. That's been the bulk of it. Working on some writing for some upcoming projects, trying to meet with some camera folk on my film that I will be shooting in early 2022. So a lot of preparation for things like that. All right, Bob, why don't you start us off with a plot synopsis for episode 48 of G Gundam.
Earth's SOS, Rescue Gundam Federation, or in Japanese, Chikyu SOS, Shutsugeki Gundam Rengo, which would directly translate into Earth SOS, Sortie Gundam Union. Domon's father is now out of his cryogenic state and says that to beat the Devil Gundam, Domon must destroy the colony's power source. Gundams from around the world gather to defend the Earth from the Devil Gundam. Ulube, meanwhile, pilots the Grandmaster Gundam, which consists of the Master Gundam and the other members of the 4 Heavenly Kings, created from the colony's power source. The Shuffle Alliance destroys Ulube with their combined power, but the Devil Gundam colony does not stop. With no other choice, Domon's father tells him the only way is to destroy the core life unit, Rain. Domon refuses and leaves alone to search for Rain.
Meanwhile, over here, we have a very nonchalant title, Take Off into Confusion, and the Japanese looks like Konmei I no Shutsugeki.
Yes, so the letter E that you saw after Konmei, that E is pronounced E. So,
okay.
Konmei E no Shutsugeki. That translates into Sortie into Confusion.
Yeah, probably take off for the middle school crowd they were aiming at, so understandable.
Certainly.
In this episode, Duo finds the Gundam engineers and tries to bring them over to Peace Million so they can stop the combined ships from crashing into the Earth. Dorothy attempts to prove to Catra in a fencing duel that war is the only way peace can be understood. Hiro and Relina return to the Peace Million, where Hiro asks Relina to believe in him before he leaves with the Wing Zero to face Zex one last time. Wu Fei fights Mobile Dolls and gets his rematch with Treize, questioning if Treize understands justice and the consequences of his action. And Treize reveals that he just might as he charges Wu Fei and forces him to kill Treize in self-defense. All right, a lot going on in both of these episodes, so let's dive on in. You know, you're going to laugh at this.
I don't think I will, but go on.
I like Carrot helping out, trying to save the day, right? I had this ironic love of him at the beginning, and as all ironic enjoyment becomes, inevitably, it is now legitimate.
No, but I think that you will not be made fun of for thinking that Carrot did the right thing here, because it is his mini redemption. In the most minor of arcs in this series, he completes his arc.
Yeah, and like that I like, and Nadomo comes and he's like, you just might be a good leader after all. Like, it's like, okay, Carrot, you're cool in my book.
Don't tease me like that, and then Domon just laughs at it.
Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of laughter in this episode. There's a lot of, like, ending 80s shows where people are just laughing.
We're going to talk about the laugh in the elevator in a bit.
Okay. So that's what I find weird, is that is sort of what stood out to me the most. Another thing, so this is really feeling RPG Final Dungeon-ish.
Oh,
here.
yeah. Oh, yeah.
Which is actually it works fine for me. Interestingly, Gundam Age was a show that was actually based off of a video game and hides it a lot better. But like, again, I don't mind that they're going this route for a 1994 show. Although then it becomes odd that we got the secret final villain, but now there's also another secret final. We got two for the price of one.
Kind of. What are you referring to as the second secret final villain?
I get like this, whatever this Rain Core problem is going to be.
Oh, I wouldn't call that a secret final villain so much as I would call it a Rain Ex Machina situation.
There is an interesting battle at the end of the third disc of Final Fantasy VIII where you have to fight this witch, but the witch also has the love interest attached to her, and the witch is like draining her. So you have to fight her, the witch, at the same time that you have to heal your other person. Like, that's what I'm expecting, something like that to kind of happen here, or like they have to extract her before they can fully defeat the Devil Gundam, something along those lines.
Yes, that is very much the right mode of thinking. I will give you the heads up.
Yeah.
As it's appropriate for this month, we're recording in June at this point. I don't know if it's going to come out in time. It's the beginning of Pride Month, so I will simply say that for the final episode of G Gundam, love wins.
In the fashion of RPGs, this final dungeon, not that impressive.
Well, yeah, because this is less like the final story dungeon and more like the Ultima Weapon dungeon that became popular after 7.
Yeah, like they're basically the only challenge they have when they're going in is like the American guy in typical American fashion just punches random stuff, and like they get trapped, and then like they get to magically break out of that. They also get to magically defeat the Liu Bei guy. Like, Liu Bei comes in and is out real quick.
Yes, but we still have one more episode.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind, as well as the fact that I think they tried to do more explaining on the dub side, because they didn't do as much exposition about the point on my side.
Yeah.
But I kind of remember them talking in the English about how he'd been infected with DG cells during that fight. And, you know, episodes later, this moment, his mask falls off and we get to see the full DG cell version of Liu Bei.
Yep, a good reveal there.
Yeah. And I think it does well in the same way that you've been talking about your final boss dungeon setup here. This is very much like a Seymour or a final form. Oh, God, why am I forgetting the other monster in FF7?
There are a million monsters.
No. The big bad one that we first meet after we have to deal with Sephiroth ripping Mama out the core there. Genova, thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know why I forgot Genova. I'm rushing in my brain right now.
That's okay.
But this whole situation feels very much like a Genova situation, because we keep getting more and more of this flowing evolution, not just of the Devil Gundam proper, but the primary antagonist that we are understanding is associated with it, you know?
Yep. Yeah, I mean, this episode does end at 49. I'm not sure why they didn't go to 50 like all the other shows. I think you could have stretched this out to 2, but what we get now is like...
Oh, I'm sorry, what... I feel like there's another series that ends on 49 too.
Yeah, again, and
which
that
one
show,
was that?
That show definitely needs more episodes. They had to cut so much out. So I don't know why they were really stuck on 49 for these two shows. The show that came out previous to this, Victory Gundam, had 52. So, that's all. Like, I think, because like the half of the episode is them getting to him, and then the other half is like he grabs some people, and then like Domon talks to some dead guys, right? And the Power Rangers fashion, like the spirit friends, I think you called them once.
Yeah, I called them Spirit Rangers or whatever, but yeah.
And then then he's just like, then their shuffled magic powers happen and they break free. And part of me's thinking like, maybe they just didn't want to animate this giant Gundam because it was too complicated.
Well, yeah, because it's literally just a monstrosity that's being held together by the fucking power supply cords.
Yeah.
This grand and it's not even the proper machines. They're making a facsimile of each of these things. The Gundam Heaven Sword didn't have that gigantic level of claw on it. It's a facsimile, so on and so forth, you know?
What I saw, right, so cool Tibet guy comes on back, and he's got all the Gundam world. They're all teaming up. We get this big unified thing. Yes,
I've been waiting for this.
And hiding somewhere in the background is the Wing Gundam.
Is it, though?
Maybe it's the Wing Zero? I don't know. One of those two.
That's interesting. A hint of things to come?
Yeah. Yes. So what country might he be from? Well, if Gundam Build Fighters has taught me anything, probably Italy. But Italy already has the Neros Gundam, so I don't know.
Then you have the entire squadron of Mermaid Gundam prototypes that come from Neo-Norway. You have crabs, you have other actual mermaids and not just a fish coming with body through it. Like, there's just an onslaught of these prototypes. And they had a similar situation with one of the other countries there, I'm forgetting.
Yeah, the Windmill Gundam proves to be
the Windmill Corps.
Yeah, the Windmill Gundam proves to be so shitty of a Gundam. They were able to mass produce 40 of them. And if you have watched other Gundam shows, the mass produced suits always are shitty.
Well, I mean, sure, I'll take that. All the other suits that we saw during Gundam Wing were shitty, apparently.
Yeah, like nobody wants to pilot a Leo, right? If you're like, I want to be in the Wing Zero, or I want to be in the Death Scythe Hell, like they're all cannon
Well, no
fodder.
one wants to have a basic tank when you have a magical plane nearby.
Yeah, yes, exactly. You don't want to be the cannon fodder people. That's no good.
Sure. But I loved having this entire Earth unification done in this battle and having it tie into this idea that, we might be fighting to see who is better, but in the end of it all, we are people who understand each other best through that fighting. It ties into this narrative that they're trying to do, where it's not fighting in the war style that we see throughout the entirety of Wing. It's the idea of the martial art, the idea of being able to speak through one's philosophy, which does involve physical contact. You know, if this were a hugging match, if this was professional cuddling arena, then...
What?
Listen, this world, 2021, I wouldn't be surprised if that's a thing out there. There's competitive tickling.
Oh, good Lord.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
So my point is, if you are able to come to this philosophy and try to use the physical nature of that philosophy to give this idea to somebody else, you can look at this in the same way that you might look at Yuri on Ice and how their dance ice skating, their performance is going to elicit reactions and understanding between each other. This is common throughout a lot of sports anime. I think you could say the same thing for iShield 21, as you're so fond of.
Yeah. And, the show has certainly, I think the show probably needs to do something like this based on what it sets up. But for me, a little schmaltzy. But certainly a crowd pleaser. So I get it. Just real quick on Lube some more. He has this Clark Kent effect where he fits into his clothing very comfortably, but as soon as he rips off his jacket, way bigger than the space allotted by that shirt. And his voice actor in English does not give a shit. He is just sleepwalking through this role.
To be fair, it is not a very dynamic role compared to literally every other character in the show.
I almost preferred the couple of moments he chose to be like mustache twirling evil, because at least there was some dynamism. But there's a lot where he's just like, yes, and then this was my plan. And then I'm going to kill you, Dr. Kashu and everybody. Like, I liked at the end where when he's in the suit and he's like, ah, ha, 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 look at me, I'm so muscular. That I preferred. So tell me.
I also want to point out a specific moment when I think the machine gun punch is set off by Gundam Max Stratum. He literally flexes his pecs and creates the bounce effect that leads to those coming back at them. That was just lovely.
Yeah, twice America's just punching stuff out of random. But at least, like he got to show off some of his personality. The other three just sort of like a little kind of generic feeling. They didn't kind of get a hint of a moment.
I'm reluctant to say that because George also does a bit of his personality with his Rose Hurricane attack is an attempt to save his buddy America because they're the obvious pairing compared to Russia and China, who are paired off as the black and green compared to the blue and yellow that are these two.
So tell me, but you wanted to talk about this laughter. Tell me about that.
All right. So, hey, people, get ready for some very hot takes.
All right. I love it.
Final Fantasy X. A lot of people misunderstand the laughing scene. For context, there's a moment early on in the game where everybody's feeling down after a scenario happened and people are starting to feel a way about Yuna, the person that you're escorting to these different places on her mission. While everyone's down, Titus, and it's Titus, not Titus, I will fight you. Titus goes on and talks about how you just need to laugh it off when you're scared or you're feeling down. And he does this really forced laugh, and it is painful. I didn't understand it at first either because I'm like, this is the first time we get voice acting and we get this shit laugh. What is this? The intent is that it is a forced situation. Nobody likes being forced to laugh. But once you let yourself into it and realize how ridiculous it seems, you can release the tension that is there. The same thing for these five. These four individuals are telling Domon, we're not following you because you're the leader of this, elite group that we've been given these magical crests from. We're going with you because we think you're a cool person and we care about you, but we have to preserve our masculinity because 1994. So we're going because we like to fight. We're just a bunch of wild and crazy guys. And Domon, says this to them and they all admit it. And he admits that he's crazy too. They laugh at the idea. They're laughing because this might be their last moment of being alive together. They know that they're going into a situation that could lead to any one of their deaths, if not all five of their deaths. So in the protection of this huddle circle that they've made with their Gundams while standing on the cockpit doors, they just muse for a moment until they get to the top in this conveniently sized elevator that would be way too large if it were literally anything else going in there. I don't think you're going to have pallets that large worth of shit. So it's just Gundam sized. I will admit to the absurdity of that because that struck me. But this friendship that has been developed and this caring between these people because they understand each other's fists allows them to release this tension before they go in to start this thing that could end with them saving the day, but probably at the loss of their own lives. No, that wasn't recording. That was me. Voice actor, remember?
Okay. So you've talked a lot about the references to kind of Power Ranger structure in this show.
Yes.
But it feels like a lot of this is just me wanting to clarify some things. It feels like a lot of this episode was Domon taking the lead, and then he has the epiphany, and he's the one who releases them. He's sort of doing most of the work, and then they just kind of come in and do this last attack together. Is that usually how they kind of display these things of teamwork? Is that the best way to kind of showcase teamwork?
It is one of the ways that is done. As we've already acknowledged on several occasions, Domon is clearly our red, air quotes, our heart of the team, given leader, whether or not it's a tactical perspective or not. He, in trying to rouse the spirits of these others and having built this trust that we, again, established is coursing through each other in the elevator, he's able to build himself up after having his spiritual pep talk from Mom, Bro, Shadow Bro, and Papa Teacher. Being able to have that moment of clarity and reflection, whether or not it's actual spirits or just him trying to come to his center, as we've learned back in the Guyana Highlands, is able to reach his hyper mode, as they've called it in the show, at least in the stateside a couple of times, I'm sure, when they go gold. Yeah, I had to do it for you.
Super Saiyan. Yeah.
But when he starts building up his spirit, that rouses the spirit of the others. One of my favorite shows, in fact, the first Super Sentai that I watched, not my first Power Ranger series, my first Super Sentai.
Yes.
There's a difference, all right?
Yes.
Bakuryu Sentai Aba Ranger. Roughly translates to Blastosaur Sentai Danger Ranger.
You say Blastosaur?
Yeah, it's a portmanteau. Baku, like the bombs that you have in Final Fantasy.
Yeah.
Baku is the word, or at least a portion of the word, for explode.
Okay.
Ryu, while it is dragon, they often referred to dinosaurs as dragons. So there's always that connection there.
Sure.
So Bakuryu, exploding dinosaur, Blastosaur, as one of my friends did in their attempt at doing a sub, they have this power that they refer to oftentimes as Dino Guts.
Okay, in our theoretical remake, another good thing about stretching out this battle is you could let other people do some helpful things too, or you could do more time in there making their way to the core, where other people could prove their usefulness. So Domo doesn't have this Jesus Christ-like quality to him, where he's the only one
in the God Gundam.
Yes, I know.
I do want to just stop on that last note for a second, though. As you mentioned, I have often associated this series to a lot of the Super Sentai associated tropes. Mm-hmm. I will take this moment to note that the reason that I would associate Domon to Red, beyond the fact that he's our primary protagonist and everything, is the fact that in shows like Super Sentai, you have this focal point character that will always take precedence in terms of their hero's journey, in terms of their power level, in terms of their general connection to the characters in their series. I would posit that Kenshin, because I'm sure he has a proper name and I just don't remember it because I never actually watched the damn series, but I know enough about it. Even though there are other capable individuals in that show, everyone will still always defer to that central character. Inuyasha does the same thing. Even though you have that perverted priest, we really early on get rid of his super powerful attack by saying, hey, Sashomaru or the actual primary antagonist is just going to spit out giant Japanese hornets. And if they get inside him, he's going to die. So anytime he tries to use his special attack, hornets, it's like counterspell and magic.
Yeah.
But you will always be able to defer to Inuyasha's capabilities with his wind scar and what have you. So that's kind of the plight of any of these shonen series that have groups of characters. There's always the primary one that everyone will defer to. And that is typically what happens with the Red. The Red will always be the one that has to be the one to rouse everyone up, that they're going to be the one to help rejuvenate their spirits.
Yeah, they are. A lot of shows do go that way. I think that's too hard to sustain over the course of a series, so I tend to be less interested in that method. I'm an ensemble man if we're in TV town.
All right, well, let's go to Wing.
Yes.
In the English, there's a moment where after Duo finds the 5 professors and gets them all suited up to bring them over to the Peace Million, he refers to himself as he protects them with his little cloak shield. The god of death and disease, or the death and pestilence or whatever. I don't know if he's referring to himself as now a god of 2 things, because the wording in the subtitling makes it seem like there is a separate god of X.
Yes.
This then makes me think that these Gundams are possibly signifiers of the four horsemen of the apocalypse. Maybe add Lucifer in there by way of Zero.
So Zero does refer to himself as the god of death, and he is referring to the mad scientist as Pestilence in that moment. When he gets the Gundam from Professor G, Duo refers to himself as the god of death due to stuff in his childhood, because misfortune seems to follow him everywhere he goes. And then G says, well, if you want to be the god of death, you can just think of me as the god of pestilence. And so this is a pre-callback to that.
All right, so this is something involving more manga-related pieces?
Yeah, it might come up in the movie, too, because we get some flashbacks, but I don't remember if they state that specifically, but it definitely is in the manga.
Next, I'll touch on Wu Fei. With Wu Fei and his fight with Treize, I do appreciate that Treize memorizes the number of people that have sacrificed themselves in his name, and that he does try to memorize the names of all those that have sacrificed their lives for him. It shows a greater caring on his part that was not apparent in the very early parts of the series. And whether or not you've already given to the idea that he is more caring by this point, it's this moment that will ensure that you don't have an ambivalence to the idea of maybe he is good, maybe he's not. Good being subjective, of course. He is at least an honorable individual for acknowledging the loss of life for a cause. And it makes him more admirable here than at any other point in the series. I do want to talk about Wu Fei. I found it interesting that for all his frustration, quote unquote, he was seemingly hoping to be the one to die in the duel so that way he felt better about the thing. He wanted a warrior's death, but in effect, a secret suicide. What is that? Is that because he wants to be with the people that he lost prior to becoming this integrity individual? Is this because he wants to be with his wife Nataku?
So it's interesting that you talk about people and their reactions to Treize. Most people I've shown this to and have talked to, they actually get very surprised by this scene. I think a lot of them come in expecting that at some point they're going to be able to get Zex on their side again, and then like everybody teams up against Treize because of that strong setup and leaning that they did at the beginning of the show and people's inability to reevaluate their perceptions of characters. And so, I think that makes this moment miss on a lot of people. But also, for those writers out there, this scene is extremely hard to do and have it be believable. There's a lot of things they had to do for 47 episodes to set up this situation between these two characters that people would have mixed feelings on and have it work. And it's one of the best scenes in all of Gundam, in the whole metaverse. Like, just it by itself is great. And then when you have to reverse engineer to see how you got there, it's all the more impressive. And this is my favorite episode of Gundam, because between this and the Dorothy thing, you get so many interesting layers happening here and things worth examining, and payoffs, a lot of payoffs. Wu Fei is saying kind of what you'd hear in a lot of these shows and movies as the hero is fighting the bad guy. Do you even know? Do you even care? Do you even realize what you're doing? And he goes, well, yes, I do. And he's like pained by it. And he's memorizing all these people's names. And like what we found is that while we're meeting all of these minor characters' names, like Walker, we haven't seen since episode 3 when he died fighting the Sandrock. Zex is saying his name like 2 or 3 times, so that now in episode 48, we're like, oh shit, he even knows that guy? I haven't thought of that guy in months. And Zex, it's right there, ready to go. Otto, all these people he had to kill, the quote-unquote pacifists in the Federation. Yeah. Like, it's all there. And Lady Yun gives him the numbers, and he's like, add it to the... He has this list he looks over. It's crazy. Yeah. And I think they both come in wanting to secretly die. Zex is doing it for the bigger picture. Wu Fei, I think, also...
You mean Treize, right? Not Zex?
Yeah, Treize. Wu Fei, I think, comes in... Partly, for the Warrior's Death, maybe for everybody else, but I think also, and not sure if it's before or after Treize goes on his thing here, I think Wu Fei just, in English, he says, I didn't expect to win, and he's very sad about it. Is that what you kind of get in the Japanese?
Yeah, he says something to the effect of, I didn't expect to win,
Yeah.
And I think he says something else. I'm not sure. But yeah, effectively, he is acknowledging that he thought he would be in Treize's place in this fight instead of being given the effective easy win here.
Yeah, and Treize does basically give him a wide opening there once he said his piece and conferred what he needed to do to Wu Fei that he refers to as one of the few people that understand me. And Wu Fei doesn't know what
in the
to
Japanese,
do with
he
that.
refers to him as his eternal friend.
Yeah, so he says that when he's dying, but during the fight,
Yeah.
He's like, hey, why don't you use your dragon things? You use your full strength against me. He's like, well, you could have killed me back there and you didn't. And he's like, well, you're one of the few people that understand me. I can't kill you. And so Wu Fei, I don't know if he's sad before or after that exchange happens, but I think he always knew Zex was the better fighter. And so, he does
Treize,
go
you
in.
mean?
No, yes.
Because you've referred to him as Zex again.
He knows Treize is the better fighter. He's lost to him once already, and Treize was even holding back there, like he says. But I think both of them know that in the world that's to come, in the world that they're both fighting for here, there is no place for them. And this is something Wu Fei's going to have to deal with in the movie, is going, it's kind of like what that Catherine Bigelow movie, The Hurt Locker, is about, right? Like, how was one integrate into a society when you're not in combat anymore, when that's all you've been in for years? In this case, it's just a year.
Where I haven't seen The Hurt Locker, but I have heard a lot of these similar stories of people who have gone to war, specifically the 20 years war or more that we've been in out in the Middle East.
Yeah.
And all these people who are stuck out there, made to live this combatant, live by the gun, die by the gun lifestyle, to come back to suburbia, to come back to all these situations where you've been trained to be on edge your whole time out there, and now you're just told, chill out. You can't. You've actively been trained to be on alert at all times.
Yeah.
So if you hear a exhaust pipe burst, you think that, you're under fire, and you react in that way because you're on alert. You don't feel safe, even if you are at home,
Yeah, and this is why Dash, friend of the podcast, Death Scythe Hell enthusiast, this is why he has to have a dog now. Right, this is his social service. He has to, every 4th of July weekend, he has to go to all of his neighbors' house and be like, "Please do not set off fireworks." Like this is the life he has to live with now. And for all these shows over the years that have been doing these war shows, and then they fight peace, and they're like, "Oh, the end." Like, I think it's good that the movie tries to set up Wu Fei to then have to deal with these things because. Yeah, that is a cost that we're paying for this peace, and we need to talk about how what we do in the aftermath.
Well, I also want to just note here that I don't appreciate the way that people depict things like post-traumatic stress disorder or complex post-traumatic stress disorder, something that I have due to family issues. I don't like how they depict it in such a simplistic way like they do on NCIS and other shows like it. I feel like it waters everything down for a simplistic, mindless show when other films, other stories, spoken, written, otherwise, have a greater handle of the complexity of the matter and the severity of it. And it is honestly hurtful to see these people basically be turned into either easy villains of the week that we need to feel bad for because, America pride, whatever, but also that they sometimes become the butts of jokes in some films. I think of somebody like John Goodman's character in The Big Lebowski, who may or may not have seen active duty, but is definitely affected by the things that he experienced in such a way that he clearly does not have his shit together. And whether or not you want to attribute that to his time in service doesn't matter. You've made a buffoon of this character that we're supposed to also understand is a effective war hero or war hero adjacent. There's a lot of question that comes into play here with that sort of topic. And it's, again, why I have trouble consuming war associated media, because it either uplifts the wrong things or downplays the things that need to be uplifted.
Yeah, and this is what draws me to Gundam and its realistic robo outings, is because it does understand that, and it is able to talk about these complex things that TV normally can't or isn't allowed to. And so, in this show, this scene here would have been so easy in most anime to not be able to do or to have it play out exactly the way you do. But you get two surprises. Treize knows the names of all the people. And Wu Fei is ashamed of himself for not losing and for killing Treize as Treize is drifting off saying, "You are my eternal friend. I'm glad I was able to fight you." Like, I've watched this scene 11 times. It makes me cry every time. And when I watch with other people, most of them not even getting what's happening. They're just like, I'm glad he's gone. And I had to cut the clip out to put at the beginning of this episode. And I'm like kind of crying there. And it's totally out of context. It is so impressive that they were able to get here when most shows wouldn't even want to try to get here or think that you could get here. And they did it,
Absolutely.
and it's believable. So then, the other thing that impresses me is the Dorothy stuff. So what is drawing your attention?
Oh, yeah, no,
there?
I was trying to save the Dorothy stuff for last because there's a lot to talk about in this penultimate episode.
Yes, a very busy episode, which is good because all the good stuff is here. And next episode is like, all right.
Well, so before we jump into her, though, I do just want to quickly tap the two least touched characters in this episode, being Hiro and Trowa.
Yes.
I just want to acknowledge them real quick. I do appreciate how Hiro has his moment of heroism. And also the main character actions that one might hope for in these situations. It does allow him to be endeared a bit more before seemingly sacrificing himself. I'm not counting him off the list until we see the final episode. I appreciate his conversation with Relina and giving that moment of intimacy, even if it is distanced by the shielding of the helmets, before using that opportunity to slyly push her away so he can't be stopped from doing what he's going to do. There's a really neat amount of intimacy in that moment that I think could be lost on people if they aren't actually allowing themselves to be absorbed into the scene. Only pushed further by Relina struggling to try and give the warning to Hiro and being held back by the others inside the getaway shuttle.
Yeah, and we had kind of alluded to this scene in the manga last week. And it is a little more talky, and it seemed like we were not going to get where Hiro says goodbye and Relina's like, "You don't intend to come back." We end up getting that, so that's good. But what I did like that this show had that the manga missed is like this moment where these two people who greatly care about each other are kind of having this mini philosophical spat where he needs to go fight this war to bring about the world she wants to, and she thinks that's not the way to bring about the world she wants to. And they have to have these political poles that they're at, but still find the affection they have for each other. And I think that's a tough balancing act to do in TV these days. And they were doing it in 95.
I do want us to now pivot to the last person before we get to the Catra and Dorothy stuff, which is Trowa.
Yep.
I just appreciate that Trowa is this. If I were to see him in a RPG, he is the luck-based individual, and he eludes death. I like that idea of him not only being acrobatic in terms of real life agility, but also being able to be an acrobat in terms of the state of his own life. He is able to deftly dodge death several times throughout the course of this series, not even including any of your ancillary material outside of this. Mm-hmm. And it does really paint a different picture of him than what I would say of him if I were to just see the poster prior to watching this.
Yeah, and Trowa does make a little reference. Trowa sort of gets the shaft in this. Everybody's got a little mission that they do.
He's the yellow of this team.
Yeah, but like he gets a good line. And what I like about this final dungeon thing we're doing here in Gundam Wing is like half of it takes place out of Gundams. Mm-hmm. Huge fan of that. Love that you took that liberty in your Gundam show. But Trowa comes in, he picks up the wounded Catra, and he says like, "Oh, a woman who can't cry, that's sad." And like it brings me back to the episode that was called Catherine's Tears, where Catherine's tears were what saved him from killing himself and what made him realize Hiro's message of like living a good life by following your emotions. And so he feels bad for Dorothy there because she can't do that. She can't find those emotions in her to give her a fulfilling life. And so that's sort of a deep cut callback that they were able to do for him.
I do have to agree that a person who cannot cry is sad. I agree with Trowa. It is sad that Dorothy cannot shed tears, even though we did see just earlier that she was shedding tears as she was stabbing Catra. Let's talk about that.
What is standing out to you?
I do appreciate it is a little on the nose the way that they're trying to depict this repartee of philosophical ideals while also literally having a repartee by way of a fencing fight. I appreciate that throughout all of it. Catra is trying to do it in the most peaceful way. He's doing a lot of defensive maneuvers, a lot of simple deflecting strikes. He is not actively aiming to kill Dorothy. He is upholding in his physical fight the belief that he has, the belief that he presents at the least, versus Dorothy, who, while shielding her face with the helmet that we established earlier is aiding the Zero system, is using it to shield her true intentions. He is clearly open. She is clearly closed. She is hiding her intentions and her true emotions behind a sword and a physical veil to her true feelings, versus Catra, who is very open with his flourishes and trying to allow for the least damage dealt to her while keeping himself safe, and is allowing himself to be harmed. He is an open individual. His kindness does lead to him taking a major blow because he was willing to be open. That does allow him to be harmed. And in several other things that I've been seeing recently, people will often prefer to be behind this veil to avoid harm. If you hide your true emotions, you are shielded, but you are also that much more sensitive. You are that much more weakened by any touch that might pierce through. In this case, Catra has foregone any protection of trying to hide his true kind nature, this hardening of self, and it allows him to be harmed. But in the end, he is the victor, as shown by the fact that his connection with these individuals allows him to be saved and ideally not die. We haven't seen the last episode. I'm not going to confirm or deny that. But you could see that even though Dorothy does this act that she inside feels is awful, but is necessary in order to get to the outcome that she wishes, she finds out after the fact that it was all for naught. And things are going way off course from what she had assumed was going to be the case, and then feels awful about the act she just did, that she, in her mind, has killed a innocent individual for an outcome that she did not think would come otherwise.
So the helmet's a good thing to bring up, just like there's a little bit of good direction there. Just like with the Hero Relina helmets, here it is doing that. But it also is paying off this thing they set up that I actually didn't like, but now maybe I am okay with it, where when Catra took out the Zero system of his thing, I was like, why are you going to do that? But now it makes sense, right? Because it's not just the veil she's bringing up. By letting the Zero system control her, she's being dehumanized, and Catra is being the human, and she's doing it to not feel pain. And she's, because her father went off to war to protect her, and then he died, so she has to hide her emotions. He did it ostensibly to make sure that the world she was in was safe, but war kept continuing, and also she was sad that her father wasn't around anymore, so it didn't really even do the thing he wanted it to do. She needs people battling in war to be justified, and this is kind of what drew her to Treize's philosophy, because at least her father was like this epoch of what humanity can be. Even though he had to die, at least he became sort of superhuman in his death in a way. And so that's why she's kind of insisted on this, because she needs this philosophy to be true so she won't break down in those tears. So she doesn't have to be herself anymore, and she could be something inhuman so that she could deal with the sadness of this world. And Catra does lose the fight, but this is why the thing's called Glory to the Loser, right? Treize loses, Wu Fei in a way loses, Catra loses, but that's okay because winning isn't what necessarily brings the world we want anyway. Catra has to fight losing battles because he doesn't want... His whole argument in that fight is that we can't keep seeking revenge on the people we hate or the people we don't like, because then none of this ever ends. And so we have to turn the other cheek in a way. We have to find the empathy for those people we hate, or this cycle will just perpetuate itself. And she's calling, in the anime, she calls him an amateur, but in the book, she calls him a child. And that's sort of the central argument, is that she thinks that he's being childish, but she's the one who is refusing to grow up and not leave that state she was in when she was like 10 or 8 or something. Yeah. And like this is also like the Trey's one. This is also a complex scene to kind of set up and put together. Like, and to even sort of believably do in your anime, where 1, your protagonist can lose, but 2, like that's the moral message you want to give to your audience, is that do this thing and you will lose, but in the end, in the bigger picture, like that's the way to get where everybody wants to go. So it's okay to be a loser. That's the price sometimes we have to pay.
It's interesting that you say it in this way. I do believe that while you're referring to this idea of loss to an outcome, I'm so used to the way that we would depict it, which is losing the battle, win the war situation. Because each of our individuals in this episode appears to lose, which at least in the shows that I am privy to is generally done in the penultimate. So that way, when we do get to our climax during the final episode, there's that swell that occurs deep in the chest that makes you feel like there was that final release. And whether or not we will get that from this series, I do like how even if Catra does die, he becomes very much similar to what you were just describing Dorothy's father being.
Yeah.
He becomes an epoch of the world that he wishes to see and become. This thing that Relina should supposedly bring about. The whole reason why Hero's willing to allow himself to die. He believes he is about to lose his life, which is what I'm going to count as a loss here, and not be able to continue life with Relina. But it's in order to protect Relina and effectively win the war. Troa is putting himself out on a suicide mission, trying to get everything situated the way he needs to. He is risking his life once more, acknowledging that he's dodged death time and again. And whether or not he's trying to convince himself that he is capable of doing that or not is up to question. He is willing to lose his life here and go on this mission in order to allow everything to follow through the way he believes. All 5 of these characters are going to effectively lose or set themselves up to lose. And yeah, it goes with your glory to the losers concept. It's also going to tie back into what we just had with Trey's during the episode, where realizing that we have to lose people in order to achieve our goals is something that we should not understate. We have to know the bodies lost. We have to know that they aren't just bodies, they're people that had a name and a life and everything else that they were willing to sacrifice on behalf of this ideal.
Trey sets us up halfway through the show with this glory to the loser concept, where he gives his good speech, where he says, I'm resigning from Romefeller because winners do not decide the future. It's the losers, and I want to be a loser. And because the whole thesis of the show is that, like, war is not great, we need all this eternal peace and stuff, but if we keep fighting wars, how do we get to peace? And each war will just inevitably lead to another war. So, like, he's setting us up for losing to be the good thing. And Catra is this great example because, he went down to Earth to protect the colonies from Oz, but then the colonies disown him, and then they kill his father, and then they team up and decide to fight another war against the Earth. And like all this was somewhat caused by his actions. And so she's like, why are you even fighting this war? This is what all your actions have led to. You've lost. And he goes, well, yeah, I had to lose. Like, that's the whole thing. The one time I wanted to go out and get revenge and was driven by that, I destroyed a colony and a bunch of other people in the Wing Zero. I lost control of myself. And I dehumanize myself like you're doing now. And so I have to be willing to lose, or I'm going to become the winner and cause a system of woe for all the others who did lose. I'm fighting this battle so the colonists don't have to kind of come into this battle and have all this blood on their hands that they'll need to avenge so that the cycle can stop.
Yeah, no, I think that's very well stated.
Yes. So a lot to chew on in these episodes. Hopefully you enjoyed them as much as we did. I think now we can go the way we go.
Like sand through the hourglass, this is the way that we go.
So yeah, my way we go, and I've been trying to slip this into other episodes, but there was never a good time or enough time to go through it. So mine is from Volume 13, also the penultimate of the Gundam manga, Mobile Suit Gundam Wing Endless Waltz Glory of the Losers. And it's just sort of like, it's right before the final battle begins here, and, you know, they're leaving, Trey's and company leaving from MO2, and the Gundams are on Peace Million moving towards the Libra battleship. And then the narrator kind of comes in and gives an overall, like, what the overall sort of thesis of the show is and why this battle might be happening and what the Gundam protagonists are trying to solve. So the narrator says, the Earth, a planet in the solar system where life miraculously is able to thrive. In AC 195, through the development of the colonies, humans became able to possess new lands thanks to their abundant resources and cultivation of technology. However, this domain is never any more than an imitation of humanity's motherland, the Earth. For what purposes were the colonies even constructed? It is said that the main objective was technological progress in order to enrich the lives of mankind in the Earth sphere. But was humanity coming to this imitation domain with impossible demands? Out there, without the threats of nature, life has more stability than on Earth. It would appear that mankind had been promised eternal survival by development that knows no bounds. There must have been an age in which people were free to imagine they would be permitted to start afresh out there in space. But it is difficult to believe the colonies, no humankind, could ever forget the Earth. What did the technological development of the colonies bring to the Earth? The technology that the Earth craves most of all is military strength. Destruction is part of humanity's soul, a part it cannot be rid of. And now the colonies have developed a militaristic temperament. They were unable to forget the Earth. The Earth's beauty is grand. Humankind, a species which has come to wield great power, is now thinking about the power to control a whole planet. On a planetary scale, the existence of a life form is only momentary, and it is secondary. But in the end, humanity's thinking does not change. The time humanity has spent out in space has been for nothing. In the face of reality, their ideals are mere dreams. The place of life is counterfeit. The peace is counterfeit. Even more lives are stolen in outer space. Humankind has not forgotten the sorrow of this fact, but they decidedly make no effort to stop fighting. The blood and tears they shed are no more than ceremonial decorations. There are histories in which the turning points can only be spoken of in terms of war. Faded, sugar-coated, twisted words about fighting for peace have been spouted over again and again. For the sake of peace, the colonists took up arms and challenged the Earth. No different from humanity on Earth. Much blood is spilled, and it heightens their fervor. So why do humans fight? Perhaps the meaning of their existence lies in fighting. Those who fight feel a sense of fulfillment, and it is also a fact that those who fight are not seen as tainted. And that's a lot of what we've been talking about in both shows, and even a good deal in today's episode. So what have you got for your way we go this week, Bob?
My way, See, I always have trouble with the way we go because I'm willing to, as opposed to reality, accept what's given to me.
Your mind doesn't just drift off to other things as you're reading, as you're watching these things?
So that's the thing of it. I guess my way we go is that I go with what the show offers me. The difference between you and me when we watch these shows is that I believe you have this great series of epiphanies that you're willing to stop and chew and savor. And I use this food metaphor because unfortunately for me, I am a bit of a glutton. When I get a flavor in my mouth, especially one that I truly find myself enjoying, I almost keep forcing the food into my mouth because I want to maintain that space without really appreciating all the nuances of the flavor. I'm just so enraptured by the sensation given to me by this that I do not want it to end. So I continue to gorge myself on it. Similarly with my stories that I enjoy, whether that be written, film, otherwise, I will deep dive, whether that be post-fact, mid-show, what have you, and just continue to engorge myself and just accept the reality that they're presenting me. And yeah, I may have thoughts here and there, but I try to just accept the whole story and get the soul of its meaning. I don't think that every show or every film or every book I've ever consumed has been apocryphal. I don't think apocryphal fits here.
Not really a good word there.
No, I don't take it as gospel, right?
Okay, yeah.
I don't think of it as the story that ends all stories, that it is perfect in every way, shape, and form. But I understand that the emotion behind it and what they're trying to have me feel is of import. The facts, they can come and go. There is this ephemeral thing that needs to be just allowed to wash over you. And if you don't allow it to wash over you, if you're too involved with the intellectual aspect of it, I do feel like you lose something in translation. So where you might be able to do it mid-show, I have to wait until everything has flushed off of me to, if I did feel enough intellectual stimulation, go hard on it. I will do that on a first watch of a show.
All right, some stuff there to think on.
I went nowhere. I chased after my tail, much like this week.
Some stuff to think on there. All right, Bob, let's just take a seat down at the Nerd Corner. Let's take a walk to the Nerd Corner, where we will talk about a lot of nerd stuff. Yeah. Got a nerdy niche one for you all out there. The fall of 2019, I got to see the Mets broadcast at a theater near me of Philip Glass's Akhenaten, an opera about the ancient Egyptian king, Pharaoh, who famously was the first person on record to invent monotheism. A great score there, and I loved it so much that the next day or two, I then went to the Mets website to see if I could buy this presentation. They didn't have it. And they said that, well, Philip Glass won't let us sell this as a DVD. And I thought, that seems out of character for him. And it turned out the same director who did Akhenaten did another Philip Glass opera about a decade earlier, Satyagraha, which is about Gandhi and the people that inspired him. And it had like weird giant puppets, like this director does all this crazy shit you wouldn't expect to see in an opera. And I wanted to see that, but that's impossible to find. So, but then a couple weeks ago, the Met announced we could finally put both of these out on DVDs. They're highly in demand. And Philip Glass offered a statement, and what he said sort of made sense to me, and why he didn't want it to release them for so long. And what he said was, an opera is sort of this living, breathing text. And what I have is some music and some lyrics, and and they are infinity. So I didn't want these videos to be passed around and everybody thinks this is the only way to do Akhenaten or this is the only way to do Satyagraha. I wanted the creativity to kind of flow with each new generation. So that actually makes a lot of sense if that was the goal. But as much as I kind of agree with that, being able to watch these over and over again from the comforts of my home are very inspiring, both for their visual and musical effects. So you can find them now on the Mets website. Pre-order still for Akhenaten, but it will be out in a couple of weeks. All right, Bob, what do you have for your Nerd Corner this week?
I think I'll go with what I was talking about earlier with Dimension 20, because next week, as it turned out, this week is the penultimate episode of a run that they've been doing during the pandemic. They've still run these games, but they've done it from webcam for most of the players to keep everyone safe. They did this series that I still need to watch called, I think it's Mice and Monsters or Mice and Murders, Mice and Mysteries, something to that effect. I haven't watched it, and I'm putting myself on the spot, so I don't have the information in front of me. But it's basically if you mixed Clue with Wind in the Willows, or something to that effect, where you have these 6 individuals trying to figure out a murder mystery while in a large mansion, and everyone is a suspect. So they're going to finish that, and then the following week, not next week, but the following week, we get our teaser for the next full game, because this is one of the they like to do a large full game, and then they do a short plot game. Large game, short plot game. And I'm excited to see whether or not we're going to get a continuation of the inaugural series, Fantasy High, which feels very much like a John Hughes film, but set in effectively a Mordor-like situation. Or if we're going to already get a season 3 to what I mentioned before, the Unsleeping City, which, again, has this idea of a magical realism where the land that is New York City is a inherently magical place due to the circumstances under which it was built and how it connects to the different realms of heaven, hell, fairy, Nod, all this other stuff. And that all these connections that occur between these people, both in the real and in the magic, are profoundly deep for understanding what it means to be an American, a New Yorker, a person. The entire first season, of which I'm still watching or rewatching, culminates in the idea of what is the American dream? How do you get there? What do you have to sacrifice to get there? What does it mean to be a good person? And to get that all done in a single season is amazing. And the fact that it's one of their longer running games is worth noting. You can watch the entire first season of The Unsleeping City, as well as the entire first season of Fantasy High and a few other stories on the Dropout channel on YouTube. I would prefer that you actually just subscribe to Dropout, a monthly fee of $5, I believe, and you get a load of content, not just Dimension 20 stuff where you get to see all these great games being played by funny individuals, but still have heartfelt moments. You also get things like Game Changer, where the people who come on to play have no idea what they're going to walk into, and they have to figure out the rules as they go for all these different games. Paranoia, where you have to try and it's like Mafia, except you have to figure out who's high. A lot of good content. Free call out to Dropout.
All right, check both of those out in the show notes below. I'd like to thank Lev Van Rensselaer, the audio maven that we are craving, helping us sound so slippery smooth. I'd like to thank my co-host this week, as he will be each and every week this season, Bob Skerry. Bob, you got any plugs?
Hey, hi, Worldwide Sentai. This is Bob Skerry VOA coming at you live from Zaku Talk HQ. You can find me on Twitch, Twitter, Instagram, and a slew of other places by my handle, Bob Skerry VOA. You can also go to bobskerryvoa.com to listen to my demos, because I am, in fact, a voiceover artist.
And I am your host, Patrick Scale. You can find my features, documentaries, short films, video essays, animations, behind-the-scenes footage, and so much more at quixoticunited.com. And now, find all of our audio-related stuff, including this and other podcasts, at our sister station, Quixotic Harmonics. Thank you all for listening. Bob, tell the audience why the Khans of Mongolia make bad barbers.
Well, have you ever seen a Mongolian mountain goat?